Welcome to our Christian Life and Ministry meeting for the week of April 26th. We're going to begin our program by asking everyone to share in singing song 135, which is entitled Jehovah's Warm Appeal. Be wise, my son, after which we'll have our opening prayer by Brother Ree. Well, we have some nice points that we can look forward to in our meeting to this week. With our treasures from God's Word, we have a part, can one person make a difference? We'll see how a decisive act of courage halted Jehovah's wrath, and in what situations that we can also display courage. In Apply Yourself to the Field ministry, we can look forward to a talk answering a question of why we see two different scriptures giving different numbers dealing with the same event. And in our Living as Christians portion, we can look forward to a video as well as a discussion on how we can choose our friends wisely. But to get us started, let's give our attention to Brother Shegda on that topic of, can one person make a difference?
Can one person make a difference? It can seem to depend on who you ask. For instance, some say that to make a difference, you have to form a group or an organization to affect change. But if you ask a truck driver named Jeff, he would definitely say one person can make a difference. You see, as Jeff was driving his fuel tanker truck down the highway, it overturned, caught on fire with him trapped in the driver's seat. A woman named Holly McNally was driving a short distance behind him. She saw what happened. Now, despite having given birth less than a week earlier, Holly ran over to the truck and pulled Jeff out of the driver's seat to safety. One person, without a doubt, made a difference that day to Jeff. Yet I think most of us will agree we're personally not likely to be put into a situation where we're physically pulling someone to safety. So is it really possible for someone like us to make a difference? And the answer is yes. And to find out how, All we have to do is look at a situation that happened in Israel. Shortly after Balaam failed to curse the nation, which we discussed in detail last week, Balaam comes up with a new idea. He realized he wouldn't be able to go up against Jehovah directly, but what if he could get the Israelites to bring a curse on themselves? Now, how would he do it? What would he choose? Like a fisherman choosing the right bait, Balaam put a plan in motion. He convinced the Moab women to go into the camp of Israel and seduce the men there. But would his plan be successful? Unfortunately, this bait proved to be very successful. Notice what happens in Numbers chapter 25, and we want to look at verses 1 and 2 together. That's number 25, verses 1 and 2. When Israel was dwelling in Shittim, the people started to commit sexual immorality with the daughters of Moab. The women invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people began to eat and to bow down to their gods. As the Moabite women came into the camp, how did Israel react? Now, it should have been easy to resist the bait. All the Israelites had to do was recall how Jehovah had freed them from slavery in Egypt, how he protected them through the wilderness and brought them to the promised land. Manna from heaven, water from a rock, miracles galore, decades of care and protection and loyalty from Jehovah. And yet, they fell for Balaam's plan, hook, line, and sinker. Not only did the Israelite men begin to commit fornication with the Moabite women, they even joined in the worship of their god, the Baal of Peor. How would Jehovah react to this? Well, let's continue the account in verses 3 through 5. It says, so Israel joined in worship to the Baal of Peor, and Jehovah became enraged with Israel. Jehovah said to Moses, take all the leaders of these people and hang them up before Jehovah in broad daylight, that the burning anger of Jehovah may turn back from Israel. Then Moses said to the judges of Israel, each one of you should kill his men who joined in worship of the Baal of Peor. The stage is set. Jehovah tells Moses to start rounding up the leaders of these people and hang them up. Now, as they start to round up the unfaithful Israelites, what happens? One person in the right place at the right time makes all the difference in the world for the nation of Israel. Notice how this happens as we continue the account in verses 6 through 11. But just then there came one of the Israelites, bringing near to his brothers a Midianite woman, before the eyes of Moses and of all the assembly of the Israelites, while they were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. When Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he immediately rose up from the midst of the assembly and took a spear in his hand. Then he went after the man of Israel into the tent and pierced both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her genital parts. At that, the scourge on the Israelites was halted. Those who died from the scourge amounted to 24,000. Then Jehovah said to Moses, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, has turned my wrath away from the people of Israel because he tolerated no rivalry at all toward me among them. So I have not exterminated the Israelites in my insistence on this exclusive devotion. Now you notice an Israelite brings this Moabite woman right into the camp. He's so brazen, he doesn't even sneak her in, but walks her right past Moses and all of the assembly of the Israelites. Can you picture that scene in your mind? Moses and the others have just been told to start killing their brothers because they've engaged in false worship. And as they're weeping, right in front of their eyes, they witness the cause. Why didn't Moses and his attendants do something right then? We don't know. But we do know Phinehas did. Because of Phinehas' loyal, decisive action, the scourge was halted and only 24,000 Israelites perished that day. One person turned the wrath of Jehovah away from an entire nation. Incredible the effect that one person had on the lives of so many. But why was Phinehas moved to such decisive action? How did he know this was the time to act and in such a decisive way? Well, we find the answer in verse 11 of the account. It was because he tolerated no rivalry at all towards Jehovah. You see, Phinehas loved Jehovah so much that he didn't have to think twice about standing up for his best friend. Phineas' love for Jehovah and Jehovah's ways moved him to action. Now, it's true, it took courage, but the more we love our friend Jehovah, the easier it is to act courageously and decisively. And the same is true for us today. The more we see Jehovah as our best friend, the more courageous we are. That love for Jehovah will help us to not fall into Satan's traps like the Israelites did. And we can imitate Phineas and make all the difference in others' lives. So now, the question, how can you be the person who makes a difference? Our meeting workbook provides a nice example in the picture. Our young sister is taking a courageous stand in her science class, explaining Jehovah's creation, and notice she's taking questions from her classmates. True, it took courage, but she is making a difference. You can make a difference even among our brothers and sisters who already know Jehovah. As one sister worked out in service with a longtime pioneer, she began to confide in her about some problems she was having in her marriage. Our sister was even considering separating from her husband. However, our pioneer sister reasoned with her, used Bible principles and practical suggestions to help her reason on the things she could do to improve her marriage. And her marriage improved and she stayed with her husband because our pioneer sister made a difference that day. Even in the workplace, we can make a difference. During a work conference, an inactive brother met a new coworker for the first time. He noticed how his new workmate was different. Despite being in Las Vegas for the conference, this person wasn't drinking to excess, wasn't gambling, wasn't out partying. Sure enough, our inactive brother asked his new coworker if he was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, which of course he was. During their time together at the conference, our brother encouraged him that now is the time to come back to Jehovah and his organization. A short time later, our inactive brother began attending meetings again, and now he, his wife, and his kiddo enjoy being back in the middle of the congregation. These experiences highlight that we all have the opportunity to be courageous and make a difference, whether at school, in the congregation, or at work. The more we love Jehovah and the closer our relationship is with him, the more we will have the courage to stand up for his ways and principles. Now is the time to draw close to Jehovah. Become his best friend. And as you do, you will make a difference.
Thank you, Brother Shegda. Appreciate the way you brought that account to life and really helping us to see how we can display courage different ways today. We'll now give our attention to Brother Owens as he shares our spiritual gems with us.
We're looking forward to everyone's comments for our spiritual gems. And to get us started, who would like to read Numbers 26, 55, and 56? Brother Lonnie Scruggs, please.
However, the land should be apportioned by lot. They should receive their inheritance according to the names of the tribes of their fathers. Each inheritance will be determined by lot and apportioned among the larger and the smaller groups.
Thank you very much. Question, how did Jehovah demonstrate wisdom when distributing the land inheritance among the tribes? Start with Sister Reed, please.
One of the two factors that governed the land inheritance was the result of the casting of the lot. And the result of lot was accepted as decision coming from Jehovah himself. So it would prevent any sort of jealousy or possible quarreling among the tribes.
Exactly, thank you. And Sister Scriva.
Yeah, and it was also interesting that this, the fact that Jehovah determined the lots made sure that the allotments fell in accordance with Jacob's deathbed prophecy.
Thank you for bringing that out. And one last comment, Brother Keskis.
And we can really see Jehovah's wisdom in this because some tribes were located along coastal plains or mountainous regions, and people have preferences, but no one could complain because the decision was rendered by Jehovah.
Exactly. Next question is, what spiritual gems from this week's Bible reading would you like to share regarding Jehovah, the field ministry, or something else? And let's start with Sister Brown.
In going back to looking at Phineas in Numbers 25:11, he really showed zeal for Jehovah's worship, and he set such a fine example for us. Should not the desire to keep the congregation clean move us to report any knowledge of gross immorality to Christian elders?
Excellent example. Thank you. And Sister Fletcher?
In chapter 25 and verse 7, it says that Phineas immediately rose up and took his spear in his hand. Interestingly, Phineas was actually a young man when this account happened, but he didn't allow his age and inexperience to prevent him from acting decisively and courageously for what he knew to be right. So in the same way, we can imitate his zeal for the truth, no matter our age, but especially young ones, by being decisive when it comes to doing the right thing.
Very good. Thank you. And Brother Fletcher?
And in chapter 25, verses 2 and 3, it shows there how that association led directly to the Israelites compromising in pure worship. I was thinking these Israelites, they may have thought, well, it feels good to get an invitation to a gathering. It would be rude not to accept it. And besides, I haven't been to a party in 40 years. What's the harm in eating a meal with these people? So really the lesson for me was, if I want to avoid putting myself in a situation where worship to Jehovah could be compromised, then I really need to be selective in who I associate with and also what invitations I accept.
Very good. Let's have Brother Moak, please.
At Galatians chapter 6, verse 5, the Apostle Paul said that each person must carry his own load, meaning his own responsibility to lead a good spiritual life before God. Interestingly, at Numbers chapter 26, verse 11, it says that the sons of Korah did not die along with their father. They carried their own load of spiritual responsibility and did not follow their father's rebellion against Moses. And with what result? Well, as a result, the sons of Korah and their descendants were rewarded with being singers at and gatekeepers of the house of Jehovah. A really good example of bearing our own load of responsibility to Jehovah.
Great reminder. Thank you. Let's have Brother Keskis.
At chapter 26 and verse 14, we learn that the tribe of Simeon went from over 59,000 down to 22,200. So why was the tribe of Simeon affected the most? Could it have been because Zimri was a Simeonite chieftain? This is a sobering reminder that our actions can either be a force for good or bad on those around us.
Thank you. And let's have Brother Reed.
Another reason why we can say Phineas' killing of Zimri was not out of line or not a rash act is the fact that Jehovah just ordered the killing of those who joined the worship of Baal of Peor. So in a way, Jehovah already sentenced Zimri to death. So Phineas' execution of Zimri was completely in line with Jehovah's thinking on the matter.
Very good. Thank you. Brother Scruggs.
In Numbers 25:9, it gives us such a sobering account when it says that 24,000 have died. They were so close to that land that Jehovah was going to give them. So it's a sobering thought for us today. We're so close to that new world, yet Satan's world is even more amoral, so that we need to stay even more watchful and just learn from an example like this.
Thank you. And Fletcher, Brother Fletcher? Yes, please.
In chapter 26, verses 19 through 21, I noticed that Moses deviated just a little bit from his pattern of naming these paternal heads. Normally he would name the family head, then the son's clan name. But in these verses, he mentioned even the grandsons' names, Hezron. And I wondered why. So I looked at the cross-reference, which brought us to Ruth chapter 4, which lists the descendants of Hezron all the way down to David. And of course, Matthew and Luke, gospel writers, used that name in their genealogies leading to the Messiah. So I thought that was a nice detail that shows the harmony of the Bible.
Thank you for that good research. Let's have Sister Marietta.
At Numbers chapter 26, it contains the second of the two censuses that the book of Numbers actually gets its name from. And in verse 65, we see how Jehovah stays true to his word, with the results of the census showing that there was not a man left of them except Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. At Numbers 14:30, Jehovah had foretold that this would be the case.
Thank you. And Sister Shegda, please.
25, 10, and 11, the phrase that Jehovah uses, he tolerated no rivalry at all. We're familiar with it because we've read this account, but that's not really a phrase that we use commonly every day. That there was a 95 Watchtower that just simply put it very simply, that tolerating no rivalry at all toward Jehovah, that is what dedication means. So it's really the responsibility of every dedicated Christian to do exactly as Phineas did. We can't allow anything to take the place of that dedication to Jehovah, the place that dedication should occupy in our hearts.
Very good. Thank you. We have time for a few more comments. Sister Scruggs, please.
One of my favorite features in JW Library is being able to select a word and hit the word define, and it gives you a definition of that word. And when I did it on Numbers 25, 17, and 18, I did it on harass and on cunning, and it is just an exhaustive list of all of Satan's personality. So it just reminded me that because we're so close to Jehovah by sticking close to the organization, we don't have to fear of falling into Satan's traps, because we've learned how to avoid being caught up in being harassed or falling into a cunning situation.
Very interesting. Thank you. And Brother Keskis, please.
I actually did the same thing as Sister Scruggs. I defined the word tolerance, and tolerance is defined as being patient with others when their practices or opinions are different from ours. Now, obviously, tolerance should have boundaries. Not enough can make us harsh and demanding, but having too much can make us lenient toward things Jehovah hates. Phineas was a good example. He tolerated no rivalry at all toward Jehovah.
Thank you. And one last comment, Sister Scriba, please.
Yeah, similar point to Sister Shegda. I noticed that later through the prophet Hosea, Jehovah referred to this incident again when he said they proceeded to dedicate themselves to the shameful thing, and they came to be disgusting like the things of their love. So the Israelites were people that were dedicated to Jehovah, but when they formed this attachment to the Baal of Peor, they broke their dedicated relationship to him. So we can see why this treacherous act of disloyalty caused Jehovah's anger to blaze against them and was so hurtful to him.
Thank you. And thank you all for your excellent preparation. And we can turn our meeting back now to Brother Brown.
Thank you, Brother Owens. Appreciate your handling those spiritual gems. Nice comments from everyone as well. Well, now I'll look forward to our Bible reading. So we can open our Bibles to Numbers chapter 25. And we'll be looking at verses 1 through 18. And Brother Scruggs will be handling this for us.
When Israel was dwelling in Shittim, the people started to commit sexual immorality with the daughters of Moab. The women invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people began to eat and to bow down to their gods. So Israel joined in worship of the Baal of Peor, and Jehovah became enraged with Israel. And Jehovah said to Moses, "Take all the leaders of these people and hang them up before Jehovah in broad daylight, that the burning anger of Jehovah may turn back from Israel." Then Moses said to the judges of Israel, "Each one of you should kill his men who joined in worship of the Baal of Peor." But just then, there came one of the Israelites bringing near to his brothers a Midianite woman before the eyes of Moses and of all the assembly of the Israelites, while they were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. When Phineas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he immediately rose up from the midst of the assembly and took a spear in his hand. Then he went after the men of Israel into the tent and pierced both of them through, the men of Israel and the woman through her genital parts. At that, the scourge of the Israelites was halted. Those who died from the scourge amounted to 24,000. Then Jehovah said to Moses, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, has turned my wrath away from the people of Israel because he tolerated no rivalry at all toward me among them. So I have not exterminated the Israelites in my insistence on exclusive devotion. Therefore say, I am giving him my covenant of peace, and it will serve as the covenant of a lasting priesthood for him and his offspring after him, because he tolerated no rivalry toward his God, and he made atonement for the people of Israel. Incidentally, the name of the Israelite man who was put to death along the Midianites was Zimri, the son of Salu, a chieftain of the paternal house of the Simeonites. The name of the Midianite woman who was put to death was Cazbai, the daughter of Zur. He was the leader of the clans of a paternal house in Midian. Jehovah later said to Moses, harass the Midianites and strike them down, because they have been harassing you with their cunning dealings against you in the affair of Peor, and of Cazbai, the daughter of a chieftain of Midian, their sister, who was put to death in the day of the scourge over the affair of Peor.
Thank you, Brother Scruggs. Very nice job of reading an account for us. And the study point that was assigned to this reading was study number 10, which is modulation. And as the summary mentions, it says to convey ideas clearly and stir emotion by varying our volume, pitch, and pace. We saw so many ways in which you did that in the reading. I was just jotted down a few as when you were reading this portion in verse 3, where it says, and Jehovah became enraged. You really put some emphasis, read that slowly. So we got the point, what was bringing about Jehovah's rage. And then even in verse 6, when you were describing the situation, you slowed down in your pace and again, sped it up to just capture our attention, keep us involved in the reading. And so really enjoyed how you used modulation to make that account come to life. Thank you. We're now going to move into the apply yourself to the field ministry part of our meeting. And with the initial call being the first part, we're going to give our attention to Sister Marietta and Sister Ree.
Hello.
Well, hi there. My name is Anna, and you don't know me, but I'm not a telemarketer. I'm actually a local volunteer right here in the Hudson Valley. With the stress and effects of the pandemic stretching on, I've been reaching out to my neighbors just to check in and offer some encouraging thoughts. How are you and your family doing?
Oh yeah, we're doing okay. Life is starting to go back to normal.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. You know, because of this volunteer work, I have the opportunity to talk to a lot of people, and some of them have fared well, and others have had a tough time. If I may ask, what have you found to be helpful for your family?
Well, I think we had a good support system. Our extended family lives in the area, so we made a little bubble. That way we could meet up and the kids could play and we could spend the holidays together. It wasn't easy, but no one got COVID.
Oh, wow, that is great. It's really nice to hear that you're able to take steps to protect your family, but also make sure that they're able to cope and spend time together. That actually relates to the positive thought that we've been sharing with people. You know, just a few weeks ago was the Easter holiday, and for some, that time of year brings up thoughts of Jesus. The name Jesus is well known, but have you ever wondered who Jesus really was?
Sort of. Well, for us, Easter's about bunnies and egg hunts, and I know it has to do something with Jesus. And his death, honestly, I haven't thought about it much.
You know, a lot of people feel the same way as you. You might be interested to know, though, that the Bible actually clearly reveals the identity of Jesus. At Matthew 16:16, Jesus asked his disciples who they believed he was, and Peter responded simply, "You are Christ, the Son of the living God." So from that verse, how would you answer the question, who was Jesus?
Son of God?
Yeah, exactly. Jesus wasn't just a good man, he was the perfect Son of God. But then that still leaves the question, if Jesus was the Son of God, then why did he die?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now I am wondering.
Well, the Bible answers that question as well. I don't want to take too much of your time. So how about I call back maybe tomorrow at the same time and I can share that answer with you?
Okay, sure.
Great. I'll be happy to contact you on this number tomorrow. And as I said before, my name is Anna. May I ask yours?
Sure, it's Gia.
It's been really nice talking to you, Gia. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to chatting with you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, sisters. We appreciate your developing that initial call. And Sister Marietta, you were had the point of a effective introduction, study number 1, and really enjoyed how you did this, because here you're using telephone witnessing. And I thought the second bullet point in this lesson, it says identifying your subject, make sure the introduction makes the subject purpose of your presentation clear. And when we get a phone call that we don't recognize the number, we right away are wondering who's calling me, get to the point, and we're going to hang up. But I like how you said you were a local volunteer in the area. You're not a telemarketer, but I like how you showed that personal interest, saying, and you're sharing encouraging visits. So that puts them at ease right away. And then you ask about her personally, and even saying that you had found that some had fared well, some had not. So it was a point of concern. So really enjoyed how you did do that. We need to be effective, especially in our telephone witnessing and getting to the point. So thank you for handling that. The next portion is our return visit. And we're going to be giving our attention to Sister Scruggs and to Sister Moak.
Barbara, it's so nice to meet you in person. Thank you so much for agreeing to do a video chat.
Well, Ramona, I have to admit, I was curious to see the person that I've been talking to for the past couple of weeks.
Oh, me too. I'm so glad we did this. This is much better than phone calls. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but the last time we spoke on the phone, I promised that I would follow up on the question, why did Jesus die? And when I posed that question, you said that you really hadn't thought about it too much before. Did the church you attend ever speak about the death of Jesus?
They probably did, but all I remember is Jesus died to save your souls. But I was never quite sure what they meant by that.
Yeah, that is a pretty broad answer, isn't it? You know, there's many scriptures that we could use in the Bible to answer that question, but there was one I thought that I think you'd really like. It's in Matthew 20:28, and it says, I'm going to read it for you. It says, just as the Son of Man came not to be ministered to, but to minister, and to give his life as a ransom in exchange for many. So did you notice what he gave his life as?
A ransom? You mean like when someone is kidnapped?
It's exactly the same as when someone is kidnapped. You know, it all started at the very beginning with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden.
Well, I do remember that story. Adam and Eve ate the apple and then they were thrown out of the Garden of Eden.
Good for you. So you remember a lot more about church than you realize. With that simple act of disobedience, Adam and Eve, they kidnapped our right to live forever in paradise. You know, Barbara, I have a brief 4-minute video that explains it so much better than I can. Would it be okay if I shared my screen and played that for you?
Oh, that would be fine. Sure.
Great. So what did you think of that video?
Oh, it was nice. That was a good illustration of that comparison of the businessman who made the company go bankrupt because he had stolen all the money.
Yes. Yeah, that is a perfect illustration. And that's just, but what saved the people? What saved the people from that company going bankrupt?
A benefactor.
A benefactor. And that's just what Jesus has become for us. When he died for us, he brought back to us the opportunity to be able to live in paradise forever, just like God intended for us from the very beginning. Isn't that an amazing gift?
I would have to agree.
And if you're like me, when I get a gift, I like to send a thank you card or in some way show my appreciation for the gift that was given. So in addition to the questions that the video brought up, we might also think about the question, how in the world do I even start to begin to thank God for such an amazing gift that he's given us? Mm-hmm. And using scriptures from the Bible, I'd like to answer that question the next time we talk. Oh. And the question is going to be, how can we show our appreciation for the sacrifice that Jesus gave as a ransom for us?
Okay, well, that would be nice. I'd like to know.
Great. Let's get out our calendars and pick a time.
Okay.
Thank you, sisters, for handling that return visit. And Sister Scruggs, we appreciated the point that was assigned to this discussion as well was study number 3, the use of questions. And as we know that questions can arouse and maintain our interest, they can help us to reason with our listeners and emphasize main points. But what I enjoyed how you did with your use of questions is how you reasoned on this subject. Here, this sample conversation was dealing with why did Jesus die? You ask her opinion. Did you learn at your church? Did they ever talk about Jesus, why he died? Then as you shared the scripture, you emphasized the point of what did Jesus give his life as? And these questions even went through into the video as you talked about that benefactor in the video, and how this even relayed to these questions. So you use those throughout, and we thank you for that. Now we have our talk. Why are different figures used at Numbers 25:9 and 1 Corinthians 10:8? And we'll give our attention to Brother Keskes.
Throughout the centuries, the Bible has sustained attacks more than any other book. During the period known as the Dark Ages, there were attacks to destroy it, to stamp it out of existence altogether. During our 21st century, there are still attacks on the Bible, but these attacks are to undermine its credibility. For example, some people claim that the Bible contradicts itself. Let's turn to one of these passages where people say there's a contradiction to see if there really is a contradiction. I invite you to please turn with me to 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 8. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 8. Please notice the number that Paul uses in this passage. And neither let us practice sexual immorality, as some of them committed sexual immorality, only to fall 23,000 of them in one day. If we notice the cross reference there, Paul is drawing from the event that happened at Numbers chapter 25. So let's turn to Numbers chapter 25 and see how many people died at the event. Numbers chapter 25 and verse 9. Numbers 25 and verse 9 reads, those who died from the scourge amounted to 24,000. Okay, wait a minute. We just read in 1 Corinthians 10:8, 23,000 died, but this says 24,000? So why the difference? Well, a simple explanation is that the actual number of those who had died could have been anywhere between 23 or 24,000. Paul could have just been rounding that number down, and Moses could have just been rounding that number up. However, there is another possible explanation. Paul would have had access to the scrolls, so when he looked at Numbers 25 and verse 9, he would have seen the number 24,000. But Paul purposely chose not to use that number. Why? Well, it appears, as we read in 1 Corinthians, that Paul was singling out a specific group of individuals. He wrote about those who committed sexual immorality and were put to death directly by Jehovah. So what about the other 1,000? Let's look at the context of Numbers chapter 25 a little bit deeper. This time verses 4 and 5. Starting in verse 4. Jehovah said to Moses, "Take all the leaders of these people and hang them up before Jehovah in broad daylight, that the burning anger of Jehovah may turn back from Israel." Then Moses said to the judges of Israel, "Each one of you should kill his men who join in worship of the Baal of Peor." So what can we conclude? Well, 1,000 leaders of the people were put to death by the judges, and that's because they joined in the worship of the Baal of Peor. So the total number who died was 24,000. 23,000 were put to death directly by Jehovah for their sexual immorality. 1,000 were put to death by the judges for joining in the worship of the Baal of Peor. Well then, does the Bible contradict itself? Absolutely not. Once we compared the facts and circumstances of this event, we found that the Bible is accurate and complete in all respects. And as students of the Bible, isn't that very encouraging? Opposers will try all their might to attack the Bible, but they will never succeed. The Bible is and will always be the authoritative Word of God, and we have the privilege of sharing its message with others.
Thank you, Brother Keskis, for handling that talk and giving us that explanation to the different numbers in these two scriptures. Now, the study point was 17, understandable to others, that was assigned to this part. And we can see here, I liked how you did two things in your part, as it says under how to do it, the first and second bullet points. It says to study your material thoroughly. We could see that you were very well familiar with this topic. You explained it in your own words, but then even with the second bullet point, it wasn't a overly lengthy, complicated explanation that we may have had a hard time understanding. The use of your key points were very precise, and as it says, concise phrases and sentences so that we could understand it very well. So thank you for handling that as well. We're going to now move on to our Living as Christians portion of our meeting. But to introduce us into this, we'd like to invite you to share in singing song 28, Gaining Jehovah's Friendship. Well, now I'll look forward to next part on our program. Choose your friends wisely. We'll give our attention to Brother Escriba.
Well, as we have seen in discussing the account in Numbers chapter 25 this evening, the Israelites were disloyal and they were lured into wrongdoing on the plains of Moab. Our meeting workbook illustrates the situation nicely. Centuries later, Paul used this very account as a warning to the Corinthians, who themselves lived in the midst of a very immoral city. And by extension, it serves as a warning for us, for those upon whom the ends of the system of things have come. How, though, did so many Israelites fall prey to this trap? Because of their association. Friendship with the immoral, idolatrous inhabitants of Moab had disastrous consequences. Let's watch our video excerpt from the drama Warning Examples for Our Day, and then we'll discuss what we can learn about the dangers of associations with such ones.
Flee in terror, you Canaanite armies!
Watch out, you're not the one who flees when you see a real Canaanite, Zabdi.
That'll never happen, Bila. All the enemies of Israel will fall before us.
That's right. Jamin, what do you think about the women?
What women?
The Moabite women? You've heard about them.
Well, I've heard some women have been approaching our camp during the past few evenings, but I haven't seen them.
Well, we haven't either, but there are interesting rumors.
Tell me, what have you heard?
Well, that they're beautiful, that's what. They're not like our wilderness women. These women are more sophisticated, and I hear they're very friendly.
Why do you suppose they come to our camp while their men stay away?
Oh, Jamin, that question shows how little you know about women. The reason's obvious. Everyone's heard how we defeated the Amorites, whose forces were far superior to our own. Sihon and Og were powerful kings, yet we easily defeated them. The Canaanites are terrified of us. As I see it, these women are curious. They're interested in real men. Strong, courageous, valiant. And here we are.
Well, Zabdi, it was Jehovah who gave us the victory.
Yeah. Maybe so, but we're the ones who did the fighting. We're invincible. Look, here comes your cousin Zimri. They say he's talked to the foreign women.
May you have peace, my brother. Zimri.
Peace, brother.
Hello, Zimri. We were just talking about the Moabite women. I've heard you've met them. Tell us about them.
So you're interested in our new neighbors. Tell me, what will you pay for this information?
Tell us everything, Zimri. We'll give you whatever you want. Our most valuable possession. I know. How about 2 cups of manna?
Keep your contemptible bread. What do you want to know?
Everything. What do they look like?
I'll tell you this much, my friends. If we are entering a land of milk and honey, this will be our first taste of the honey.
Some in the camp say these women are up to no good.
Those who say such things are as blind as a camel in a dust storm. Moab is our sister nation. The Moabites are from the family of Abraham, just as we are. We can learn from them.
Tell us about the women.
Zimri, they don't worship Jehovah.
Do they oppose our worship? No. They are a tolerant and reasonable people. They respect our nation, and they respect our religion. Shouldn't we be tolerant and reasonable in return? They've proven they want to help us. Haven't they given us bread and water when the other nations refused?
Actually, they sold it to us. That's business, not help.
Tell us about the women.
No matter. They have provided bread and water. It shows they wish us well. Maybe Jehovah wants us to work with them. We help them, and they help us. I tell you, if we reject their efforts to be friendly, we'll be the losers. You know, I've seen how they live.
You've been to their town? When? How?
Cosby took me. She's a Midianite woman. Her father's a very important man.
Wait a moment. You mean Midianite women are coming to the camp too?
The Moabites and the Midianites, they're friends.
You've been spending time with a Midianite woman?
What of it? Didn't Moses marry a Midianite woman, the daughter of Jethro, a Midianite priest?
Tell us about the Moabite town. What did you see?
I'll tell you this, my brothers. These people know how to live. They know how to enjoy life. They have food and wine and music and luxury. Oh, It's how I imagine our people must have lived in Egypt. No wonder our grandfathers despised manna, that disgusting bread we've had to eat every day of our lives. Why don't you come with me to the Moabites? See these things with your own eyes. They're hospitable people. They will welcome you.
I'm not sure that's a good idea. Haven't Phineas and the teachers of Israel
Don't talk to me about Phineas. Just because his father Eleazar is the new high priest, he thinks he can play the prince. We're a new generation, and I, for one, am not going to waste my life like our fathers have.
What do you mean?
I mean this. Our grandfathers listened to Moses and Aaron. What was the result? They left the luxury of Egypt for a life of a hardship in the wilderness. And in the wilderness, they died. Aaron is dead, and Moses is soon to follow. I want something better out of life. I want it now.
Me too.
So do I. Let's be good neighbors.
Wait a moment. Our forefathers rebelled against Jehovah. That's why they died in the wilderness. Zimri, do you think it's a good idea to get involved with these people who don't worship the true God?
Jamin, your head is filled with sand. How can someone as stupid as you be my cousin? Answer me this. Did Jehovah tell Moses he was driving out the Moabites before us?
Well, no.
Did he say he was driving out the Midianites?
I suppose not.
The peoples that were to be driven out are the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, and the...
I was so confused. What Zimri said about the Moabites seemed to make sense at the time.
Not the Moabites, not the Midianites. You say that Phineas has been speaking against Moab? That intolerant fool. Go ask him this. If the Moabites are so wicked and so dangerous to be with, why did Jehovah specifically tell Moses we should not attack them? Put that to your good friend Phineas.
I don't know. Maybe you're right.
He seemed so self-assured, as though he had all the answers. But I was disturbed by his attitude. He was so bitter and opinionated. I knew that Zimri didn't really expect me to go to Phineas, but that's what I decided to do.
Here?
That was one of the best things I ever did. It probably saved my life.
Excuse me, Phineas? Could I speak with you?
Of course, young man. Please, sit down. What is your name?
I'm Jamin, of the tribe of Simeon.
Jamin, I'm happy to meet you. Is everything all right?
I'm all right, but a little bit confused. Since you're a priest, a teacher in Israel, I was wondering if you can help me.
What is it?
Well, I was wondering how you felt about the Moabites.
What do you mean?
I was thinking about why Jehovah told Moses we should not fight against them. Do you think God wants us to become their friends?
It's true that Jehovah told Moses that we're not to wage war against Moab, but he also explained why. And it's because God has determined that they will have an inheritance of land. We are not to take the land given to them. He didn't say anything about becoming their friends.
But is there anything wrong with that?
I think you know the answer to that, Jamin. Do they worship the true God?
No, they have their own gods.
Do they live by the high standards contained in the law given to our nation 40 years ago?
No.
Then what makes you think Jehovah would want us to be their friends?
Well, maybe we can learn from them. Maybe they can help us in some way. And maybe we can help them learn about Jehovah.
We'll have to wait and see how Jehovah directs matters, Jamin. However, when it comes to choosing who are going to become our friends, we need to be careful. It's true that Moab is not among the nations that we were directed to act against, yet the Moabites worship Baal, the same pagan god that the Canaanites worship. Jehovah has clearly warned us that if we seek the friendship of the peoples of this land, we risk becoming corrupted by their false worship.
Now let's use the questions contained in our workbook to help highlight the lessons that we can draw away from this brief excerpt. First, notice this question. What wrong thinking did Zimri and others express to Jamin? Let's start with Sister Moak.
Zimri and the two others spoke as if they were physical men promoting fleshly thinking. For example, the lack of appreciation for their spiritual heritage. He spoke mockingly of the contemptible manna, and also spoke disrespectfully about the Israelite women, calling them wilderness women.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you. Now, Brother Owens.
Also, he spoke about the Moabites as being tolerant and reasonable people, and that they should likewise be tolerant and reasonable, though Jehovah clearly told them that I am a God who requires exclusive devotion.
Yes, very good. Thank you. And Brother Fletcher?
And Zimri also used half-truths in such a way as to slant a statement to make it seem fully true. Like, didn't they give us bread and water when other nations refused? Clearly, they didn't give it to them. They sold it to them. So that was business, not friendship. And other half-truths like that were very cunningly worded so as to slant the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Good observation. Thank you. Sister Brown.
I was thinking too, with Zimri being the cousin of Jamin, they had this family relationship of where you could trust one another. So with the words of Zimri saying that the Moabites are people that we can learn from, and that they respect us and they respect our religion, you could see how convincing that could be.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for highlighting that possible family connection. Sister Ree?
And Zimri could see that he was seeing a Midianite woman, so he justified himself by saying, didn't Moses marry a Midianite woman who was a daughter of Jethro, Midianite priest? So I thought that was very sly also.
Very good. Yeah, we have to move on to the next question. But notice now how Jamin was adjusted. How did Phinehas help Jamin to view matters properly? Sister Marietta.
Well, Phineas was able to cut through a lot of the faulty reasoning Zimri gave Jamin with just a simple line of questioning. Do the Moabites worship Jehovah? No. Do they live by Jehovah's high standards? No. So then why would Jehovah want them to become friends with them? On the contrary, Jehovah warned them of the dangers of associating with the people of the land.
Yeah, exactly. What a good example of the use of questions to help counsel someone. Sister Escriva.
Yeah, and he also clearly explained the fact that they were told not to wage war against Moab was for a specific reason, that Jehovah was going to give them a land allotment. This did not mean that they should become friends.
Very good. Very good. Now, let's consider some questions that help highlight our personal application. What is the difference between being friendly to an unbeliever and being his friend? Brother Owens?
Well, we can be friendly towards unbelievers by applying the golden rule, doing to them as we would like done to us. We can be a helpful workmate. We can be a pleasant and kind schoolmate, for example. But being their friend would mean spending time with them outside of work, outside of school, adopting their attitudes, adopting their speech. And that's something we want to avoid.
Yes, thank you. Brother Fletcher.
Yeah, and being friendly, you can be friendly without compromising your standards, but being someone's friend involves more. It's a deeper relationship, and it involves give and take. And so we only select close friends among those who share our moral standards. So it's not possible to do both.
Very good. Now for our next question, notice, why should we be careful when choosing our close friends, even in the congregation? Brother Shekda.
There's an expression that show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you are. And so even in the congregation, are we choosing friends that reflect the same spiritual goals that we have? If we're interested in pioneering, going to SKE, coming to Bethel, is that who our close friends are? Or are our close friends busy pursuing a career, vacations, and those other things? Now, there's nothing wrong with those types of things, but if we're pursuing a goal on a different path, we have to surround ourselves with those who have the same goal if we expect to reach it.
Absolutely. And how does this apply even in the online realm with our next question? Why should we avoid chat groups on social media of people we do not know personally? Brother Reed.
Because it's difficult to verify the people you meet on the internet. As we know, many on the internet fake their name, age, or even sex, and they hide their true intentions. They may appear harmless on the surface, but they could be a Moabite woman or another Zimri. So it's best to avoid chatting with people we don't know personally.
Exactly. So as you friends have highlighted, there is even more need for caution in our choice of associates today. New threats, such as the unknown friendships on the internet. We are surrounded by workmates, schoolmates, relatives, many who do not worship Jehovah. So we need to exercise caution. Of course, due to our time today, we couldn't view the entire warning examples video, but please make some time for yourself to view the entire thing, to look for the lessons that we can benefit from, and really see how we can exercise caution in our choice of friends. With that, we'll turn our meeting back over to our meeting chairman, Brother Brown.
Thank you, Brother Escriva. Appreciate how you brought that account to life, and you see the practical value for us today. Now give our attention to our congregation Bible study. We're beginning chapter 8, and for this we'll give our attention to Brother Moak and Brother Fletcher.
Thank you, Brother Brown. At our last meeting, we finished section 2, which was, "It was my sanctuary that you defiled." And in chapters 5 through 7, we considered Israel's spiritual and moral decline. And that decline included the defiling of the temple in Jerusalem. It included Jehovah's prophetic judgments that were spoken and acted out by Ezekiel. And they included Jehovah's warnings to and actions against the nations around Israel for the ways that those nations treated the Israelites and defiled Jehovah's name. For the most part, the material in section 2 is pretty somber for the nation of Israel. But in chapter 7, it was mentioned that at Ezekiel chapter 21, verses 26 and 27, the prophet provided a ray of hope for the royal line of David. And that ray of hope becomes brighter in section 3, which is titled, "I will collect you together." So let's begin our consideration of that section by listening to the introductory video for chapter 8.
Israel is shattered, her unity torn by apostasy. She defiled pure worship and defamed God's name and is suffering the consequences. Amid the despair, Jehovah moves Ezekiel to utter a series of prophecies that offer hope. These prophecies are discussed in section 3 of the Pure Worship book. Based on Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 41, the title of the section is, "I will collect you together." Prophecies about the Messiah are among the most thrilling facets of Jehovah's purpose. They're the basis of our hope, and they're the focus of chapter 8, which is entitled, "I will raise up one shepherd." That title's based on Ezekiel chapter 34 and verse 23. "I will raise up one shepherd over them, my servant David, and he will feed them. He himself will feed them and become their shepherd." As you study this chapter, look for these key points. What lesson can we learn from the prophetic riddle about the great eagles? How do the messianic prophecies found in Ezekiel give you sound reasons to trust in the King, Jesus Christ? And how can you contribute to the peace and unity of the spiritual paradise? Look closely at the pictures and captions in this chapter and read each of the footnotes. These teaching aids will deepen your understanding of the prophecies we consider. The better you understand this material, the stronger your determination will be to give Jehovah pure worship.
So with that good introduction, let's begin chapter 8. I will raise up one shepherd. And the focus of the chapter is 4 messianic prophecies and their fulfillment in Christ. Our reader today is Brother Jeffrey Fletcher. And so, Brother Fletcher, please read paragraphs 1 through 3.
It is the 6th year of Ezekiel's exile. The prophet's heart is heavy as he reflects on the sad state of rulership in Judah, his beloved homeland, hundreds of miles away. He has seen rulers come and go. Ezekiel was born in the middle of the reign of faithful King Josiah, and Ezekiel must have been thrilled when he learned about the campaign Josiah had conducted to destroy graven images and to restore pure worship in Judah. But Josiah's efforts did not lead to permanent reform, for he was followed by kings who, for the most part, continued to practice idolatry. Not surprisingly, under such bad rulers, the nation has sunk ever deeper into the mire of spiritual and moral decay. Is all hope lost? By no means. Jehovah inspires his faithful prophet to record a prophecy, the first of several, about the Messiah, the future ruler and shepherd who will permanently restore pure worship and tenderly care for Jehovah's sheep. We do well to consider those prophecies carefully, for their fulfillment affects our everlasting future. Let us then examine 4 messianic prophecies found in the book of Ezekiel.
Thank you, Jeff. Before asking the printed question, according to the footnote, in what year are we beginning, and how does that relate to the events that happened in Jerusalem? Brother Brown?
We can see from our footnote that this exile began in 617, so the 6th year would be in 612 BCE. So this is when all these captives were then taken to Babylon.
Thank you, Brother Brown. Sister Shegna?
So we look at the first part of Ezekiel's life, the first 14 years, he was under King Josiah, and Josiah was a champion for pure worship. But after that, it was a steady decline up until the exile, one king after another choosing to be bad and sinking the nation into the mire. And of course, we've already read about what he is now seen in exile is going on back home in the temple, them degrading themselves with false worship. And so it may look at this point like it's hopeless for the nation to Ezekiel.
Thank you. Good lead into our question. Why is Ezekiel's heart heavy? And what is he now inspired to record? Let's start with Sister Fletcher.
Like Sister Shedba mentioned, the nation was just sinking into this mire of idolatry. Just like a house that has water damage and mold starts to grow behind the walls, the nation of Israel was like that mold. They had this idolatrous spirit. Even though Josiah was a good king and Ezekiel saw Josiah fix a lot of the problems, like a good homeowner, when that homeowner leaves, the mold returns. So the Israelites were rotten deep inside, and they needed more than just one good king to fix the decay.
Yeah, good. Nice example. So why should we be interested in these prophecies? Sister Marietta?
Well, this seemingly hopeless situation definitely would weigh on Ezekiel's heart, but all hope wasn't lost. Jehovah then inspires Ezekiel to record the first of his prophecies regarding the Messiah, and that one that would rule and permanently restore pure worship and be the shepherd that would care tenderly for Jehovah's sheep.
Good, thank you. Nice comment, Anna. And that brings us to the subheading, a tender shoot becomes a majestic cedar. Please read paragraph 4, Brother Fletcher.
About 612 BCE, the word of Jehovah came to Ezekiel, and he related a prophecy that shows the scope of the Messiah's rule and the need to trust in his kingdom. Jehovah introduced the prophecy by directing Ezekiel to tell his fellow exiles a prophetic riddle that illustrated the faithlessness of Judah's rulers and underscored the need for the righteous messianic ruler.
So our question is, what prophecy did Ezekiel relate, and how did Jehovah introduce that prophecy? Let's start with Brother Owens, please.
It was a prophecy that would demonstrate the extent and the scope of the Messiah's rule, and also highlighted the need for us to trust in that kingdom. And Ezekiel 17, 1 and 2 tell us that that would come through a riddle and a proverb.
Very nice, thank you. Sister Fletcher?
That word riddle in the Bible is similar to the word proverbial saying, which the point of that is really to arouse interest and make the message more vivid. So that's why Jehovah chose to use this riddle with Israel. They were already distracted, not paying attention. So he wanted to arouse their interest and make them really remember with vivid imagery the message.
Thank you, nice comment. Brother Escriva?
I thought was similar, to build on Sister Fletcher mentioned. It's always interesting to see how Jehovah has recorded in his word truths in a way that draw out the heart of right-hearted ones, to appeal to right-hearted ones. And no doubt that's what this riddle and this proverb would do.
Good, thank you. All right, nice comments. And Jeff, would you please read paragraph 5, beginning with Ezekiel 17, verses 3 through 10?
Sure. You must say, this is what the sovereign Lord Jehovah says. The great eagle with great wings, long pinions, and full colorful plumage came to Lebanon and took the top of the cedar. He plucked off its topmost shoot and brought it to the land of traders and set it down in a city of traders. He then took some of the seed of the land and put it in a fertile field. He planted it like a willow by abundant waters. So it sprouted and became a low, sprawling vine with its foliage facing inward and its roots growing under it. Thus it became a vine and produced shoots and sent out branches. And there came another great eagle with great wings and large pinions. This vine then stretched its roots eagerly toward him, away from the garden beds where it was planted. And it sent out its foliage toward him so that he would irrigate it. It had already been planted in a good field near abundant waters in order to produce branches, to bear fruit, and to become a majestic vine. Say, this is what the sovereign Lord Jehovah says. Will it prosper? Will someone not tear out its roots and make its fruit rot and cause its sprouts to wither? It will become so dry that neither a strong arm nor many people will be needed to pull it up by the roots. Although it is transplanted, will it prosper? Will it not dry up completely when the east wind blows on it? It will dry up in the garden bed where it sprouted. Here is the gist of the riddle. A great eagle plucks off the topmost shoot of a cedar tree and sets it down in a city of traders. The eagle then takes some of the seed of the land and plants it in a fertile field by abundant waters. The seed flourishes, growing into a sprawling vine. Next, a second great eagle appears. The roots of the vine reach eagerly toward the second eagle, seeking to be transplanted by it to another well-watered spot. Jehovah condemns the vine's actions, indicating that its roots would be torn out and that it would dry up completely.
So what is the gist of this riddle? Brother Kekskis?
Well, first we're introduced to a great eagle, which plucks off the topmost shoot of a cedar tree and sets it down in a city of traders.
Okay, thank you. Good start. Sister Scruggs, please.
And then this same eagle collects seeds from that land and it plants it in a fertile area where it produces a beautiful sprawling vine.
Thank you. Brother Owens.
And then we see that once it's well planted, the second great eagle comes, and that vine starts stretching its vines out toward it, wanting to be transplanted somewhere else. But Jehovah condemns the action of that vine and says that it will be dried up. It would be so dry and dead that it wouldn't be very difficult to uproot it.
Good, thank you. So let's see what happens with this riddle as we continue with paragraph 6, please, Brother Fletcher.
What did the riddle mean? In 617 BCE, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, the first great eagle, besieged Jerusalem. He plucked Judean King Jehoiachin, the topmost shoot, from his throne and brought him to Babylon, a city of traitors. Nebuchadnezzar put Zedekiah, one of the royal seed of the land, on the throne in Jerusalem. The new Judean king was made to take an oath in God's name, obligating him to be a loyal vassal king. But Zedekiah despised his oath. He rebelled against Babylon and turned to the Egyptian Pharaoh, the second great eagle, for military help, but to no avail. Jehovah condemned the disloyal actions of that oath breaker Zedekiah. In the end, Zedekiah was dethroned and he died in prison in Babylon.
So before we ask the question, can we get a reader, someone who volunteered to read Ezekiel 17, verses 11 through 15? Sister Marietta, please.
And the word of Jehovah again came to me, saying, please tell the rebellious house, do you not realize what these things mean? Say, look, the king of Babylon came to Jerusalem and took its king and its princes and brought them back with him to Babylon. Furthermore, he took one of the royal offspring and made a covenant with him and put him under an oath. Then he took away the prominent men of the land so that the kingdom would be brought low, unable to rise up, so that only by keeping his covenant might it continue to exist. But the king finally rebelled against him by sending his messengers to Egypt to obtain horses and a large army from them. Will he succeed? Will the one doing these things escape punishment? Can he break the covenant and still escape?
Thank you for reading that. So our question is, explain the meaning of the riddle. And if you'd like to use the illustration below, please feel free to do so. Sister Marietta, is that still a hand? No, it's I thought. Yeah, Brother Keskis, please.
Well, that topmost shoot proved to be Judean King Jehoiachin, and he was plucked from his throne and then brought to Babylon, the city of traitors.
Good, thank you. So then what? Sister Brown.
And as we see in the illustration, the eagle that is has plucked this topmost shoot, this eagle represents King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon.
Thank you. And Sister Escriva?
So then we know next this eagle takes some of the seed of the land. So this was when Nebuchadnezzar put Zedekiah on the throne in Jerusalem as a vassal king.
Good, thank you. So any thoughts, Brother Escriva, go ahead.
And then Zedekiah, instead of remaining loyal as he was supposed to, as he took an oath in Jehovah's name, he reached out instead to the second great eagle, the Egyptian Pharaoh, for military help, and Jehovah condemned this disloyal action. Good,
thanks. Any thoughts on why 2 Corinthians 36:13 is mentioned here? Well, you think, well, okay. Well, Brother Brown?
Well, we see with that riddle, as it said, this vine was reaching out for this eagle, and Jehovah condemned that action. And we see here with Nebuchadnezzar putting Zedekiah in this position. It was as a vassal king. He had taken this oath to be obedient, but he was reaching out to another, this eagle being Egypt, and this was condemned by Jehovah. So we know the eventual outcome as that vine was dried up. We see that what happened to Zedekiah, he died in prison in Babylon.
Thank you. Sister Shegda, please.
Yeah, the scripture in Second Chronicles really emphasizes why Zedekiah is condemned, because he became stubborn and hard-hearted and refused to turn to Jehovah. And so because of that, Jehovah condemned him there in Ezekiel 17, 5 times. As Jehovah is saying this, he speaks of how he despised the oath and broke the covenant. And because of that, Zedekiah, as was mentioned, saw a very bad fate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, good comments, everyone. Let's move on to paragraph 7, please, Jeff.
What lessons can we learn from the prophetic riddle? First, as pure worshipers, we need to be true to our word. Let your word yes mean yes, and your no, no, said Jesus. If we find it necessary to swear before God to tell the truth, such as when testifying in a court of law, we view such an oath as a serious matter. Second, we must guard against misplaced confidence. The Bible warns us, do not put your trust in princes nor in a son of man who cannot bring salvation.
So what lessons can we learn from the prophetic riddle? Let's start with Brother Scruggs.
Well, one lesson we learned from Christ Jesus, he says, let your word yes mean yes, no, no. So we need to be true to our word.
Good, thank you. And Brother Owens.
Also, as brought about by Psalms 146, do not put your trust in princes. Trusting in governments is always a bad idea, because that means that we're not trusting in Jehovah.
Good point, thank you. Sister Marietta?
And it's interesting in this matter of the oath, and one could think that since Zedekiah made this oath to a Babylonian king, not a servant of Jehovah, maybe he wasn't obligated to keep it, but the fact that was that it was made in Jehovah's name. And so similarly, for us, if we had to swear before God in a court of law, that we would be obligated to testify truthfully. We're obligated to Jehovah to tell the truth.
Good, thank you. And Sister Fletcher.
And that scripture in Psalms 146:3 highlights the importance of not putting our trust in the wrong place, where it says man cannot bring salvation. Who knows why Zedekiah was so hard-hearted? I mean, he was a pretty horrible person, but we can all fall into the same trap, trusting world's ideas of peace. But we have to remember Jeremiah, he said it doesn't belong to man to direct his step. So if someone promises they'll bring peace, just remember Psalms 146:3, they cannot bring salvation. It's like they're trying to sell something they don't own, and Jehovah won't bless that.
Thank you, Sister Fletcher. Nice comment. Well, next week, we will continue with the prophecy about the majestic cedar tree. And thanks to all of you for your good comments during the discussion today. And thanks to Brother Fletcher for his good reading. And now we can return to the chairman.
Thank you, Brother Moak. Enjoyed that congregation Bible study, really getting us interested in this prophecy and whetting our spiritual appetites for that. Really, when we look back over our meeting, we had so many nice things to consider and remember. We saw how Phineas and his act of courage made a difference, but also how our acts of courage can make a difference also. And with our applying ourselves to the field ministry, we were able to see how we can put both the initial call and the return visit into practice using these sample conversations on Jesus Christ. And then we had that nice video with the reminders to be choosing our associates, our friends wisely, even when we're using social media. Now, next week, we can look forward to how we can imitate Jehovah's impartiality. And then we'll have 2 videos even we can look forward to with audience discussion on loving our neighbor and what it means to be a real friend. That we can look forward to next week. But to conclude our meeting, we'd like to invite everyone to share in a closing song. Song 44 has been chosen, A Prayer of the Lowly One, and after which Brother Scruggs will dismiss us with prayer.